Greetings all, and welcome to the second episode of my special review series, Catch It or Run. Today, we are going to be taking a look at a ROM hack that harkens back to a simpler time in many of the childhoods of veterans to the Pokemon series, and explores a window into the past to a time where things about the future of the franchise were uncertain, but eagerly anticipated. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be taking a look at the ROM hack known as Pokémon Factory Adventure.
Pokémon Factory Adventure is a fairly new game that builds upon another ROM hack called Pokémon Roaming Red, whose special features will be highlighted later in this review, while taking it in an entirely new direction. While the game itself is new, the concepts that are included into it, namely the Pokémon within it, actually originate as far back as the mid and late 1990s, drawing information from the Pokémon Factory, a website that in its day was dedicated to helping create what was likely the very first widespread Fakemon in the history of the series, and preserves that legacy in its presentation and execution. More on that later. The game was also notably bundled with a sister set of games upon release called Pokémon Gold and Silver 97 Reforged, which essentially takes all the data recovered from the leak of the 97 Space World demo and repurposes it to create a brand new game.
I haven't decided if I want to review this secondary set of titles just yet, but it is on the table. For now though, Factory Adventure is my focus here.
The plot of this game follows Red several months after becoming the champion of the Kanto region. He is called back by his rival Blue, who is now a researcher of Pokemon like his grandfather, because in Red's absence, a strange mist has begun to envelop the land and is altering the Pokemon in the Kanto region, resulting in the creation of mutants that now roam the countryside and caverns of the land. In response, the military has instituted a lockdown of the region and seems to be covering something up. It is your job to go undercover and investigate the origins of the strange mist, and see if you can find a way to stop it and return the region to peace once more. The plot itself is fine in my books, if not a bit on the darker side, without being too much so, giving it a feel akin to the classic games it is supposedly a sequel to, plus it has an interesting twist near the end that does flip the script a bit from the classic formula, and what I mean by that is something that players might have to discover themselves if they are curious enough.
I will, however, note that the plot working as an excuse for the inclusion of the bizarre creatures that can be found in the game is a bit off-putting, as I feel it is better when the gameplay can stand on its own without being an excuse for the game's content, but this is just a minor gripe on my part.
The game itself isn't all that long, only a bit longer than the typical Red and Blue games it is based on, but it is noted that, well, as you can see, my in-game clock would seem to tell otherwise. This is admittedly a product of me using a special speed-up feature in the game to make it go faster for the sake of convenience. In reality, there isn't a lot of extra content aside from what the base game provides, though it is noted that it still might take you longer to complete if you're looking to get everything, as there are plenty of Pokemon to capture, more so than the original game, and can thus be a bit harder to get through if you're looking to complete the Pokédex.
What the game lacks in length though, it makes up for in features, giving a few good reasons to play through it from beginning to end.
The music of the game is, well, there really isn't a whole lot to say about it, as it essentially uses the same basic soundtrack as Pokemon Red and Blue. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, as it does have some catchy beats to it, such as the classic Wild Pokemon Encounter theme, classic towns and cities, gym leader battles, and much more. Still, given the feel and presentation of the game, keeping the soundtrack as it was not an unwise move, as it does give it the feel of an authentic game from back in the early years of the series, which I'm imagining was part of the intended product. Now, let's get to the two major components that help to define how this game operates in practice. First of all, there's the fact that the entire game is built on a level scaling system that increases the level and difficulty of opponents the higher the level of your strongest Pokemon is, which is a feature brought into the fray by Roaming Red. As a result, the more you level your Pokemon up, the more powerful your opponents will be when you face them. This might seem like it could make building a team harder and involve a lot of grinding, especially late in the game, but the twist continues in that it is not just the levels of the Pokemon of opposing trainers that will change. In addition to this, for the most part, the level of the wild Pokemon you encounter in the game will also change and increase within a certain variable of levels, and this can help to mitigate grinding by a great degree.
This makes team building really easy even early in the game, but it also means that team building must be a constant target to reach, as overleveling just one Pokemon will put the rest of your team at a severe disadvantage and ultimately doom you if you go too far.
This kind of need for team building is something that games like Pokemon Clover have gotten me used to, so it wasn't all that bad as a whole to me, and I think that it's a great addition for casual players that just want to keep moving from location to location without having to grind a lot, helping to make it seem more accessible to a wider player audience. At least it would on paper. The second aspect that helps to define both the game and Roaming Red is right in the title of its origin, so to speak. The game is built so you can start in any town or city and play the game right from the start there. The game scales the levels of all the Pokemon that you encounter from the beginning of the game on, and allows you to basically play the game as you wish with whatever kinds of starting Pokemon you want to. This randomized aspect spills out into other areas, as when you first start a new game, you can freely randomize large portions of the game, including the wild Pokemon you can encounter, the Pokemon in the parties of trainers, the moves learned via level up, and even the locations of items and TMs and so on. Even the starter Pokemon have changed, allowing you to choose from a selection of Pokemon that at the very least appear to have been mostly left unchanged by the mutations that have overcome others, though in most cases the final evolutions instead act to support these changes in the game. The game further helps to compensate for locations different from the traditional starter Pallet Town by adjusting not just the level, but also the evolutionary state of whatever Pokemon trainers find in the wild and in AI opponents, and the whole game itself can actually shift with these variables, as trainers going back through older areas of their adventure later in the game can often find new Pokemon in the wild that were not originally there.
As a whole, I do find this kind of randomization and choice to be quite refreshing, as while the game itself does not change all that much at a base level, this edition offers immense levels of replayability for those looking to get something new out of a traditional game experience with the base game.
However, while the aspects of randomization and level scaling do work together to make for an exciting adventure, I will remark that the game's difficulty is, well, a bit skewed. I will say right now that Factory Adventure is not the hardest game I have ever played in terms of the actual skills and Pokemon needed to get through it, but it is difficult in a way that honestly makes the game feel more than a bit annoying at times, and the level of scaling is the major culprit of it all in my critical opinion. The issue that comes with this is that there are 3 components to the difficulty that can make a lot of parts a pain even late in the game. First of all, the issue at hand is that while the levels do scale, the moves and methods of evolution for Pokemon do not change, and although the game has modified the movesets of all the Pokemon featured from the original games in order to make them a bit more viable, in truth, the time between learning new moves is still a pain to work with, because the moves you can't get access to with certain Pokemon might often not be enough to get you through some of the tougher opponents in the game.
The late game is fine because you usually have moves that you can actually deal decent damage with, but the early to mid game can be quite brutal.
This is especially a problem because of issue number 2. Trainers and gym leaders do not change in regards to the number of Pokemon they carry, or even the species in some cases. I know I just mentioned that evolutions are scaled according to level, so there normally shouldn't be a problem. The gym leaders might have the same number of Pokemon no matter what point you fight them at, but the scaling should mean that you'd be facing them at a low evolutionary stage if you're just starting off, right? Well, here's the catch. A lot of the Pokemon they would be using don't always evolve noticeably at all, so they'll be wailing on you with powerful Pokemon that will be a challenge no matter what level they are at, and early on, that creates a sudden and, in my opinion, unwarranted difficulty spike. The trainers in the game are guilty of this too, so the blame is shared everywhere. And the third and final component of this that I think holds the game down and makes the difficulty a little unfair is connected directly to the level scaling.
See, if the level scaling were actually fair and did what you imagine it would do, match the highest level Pokemon on your team, then you could still probably pull through a few battles with a full team without too much issue. The problem is that the game cheats.
In a lot of cases, both normal trainers and important opponents will have level scaled fighters, but at levels usually higher than your own, to sometimes ridiculous amounts. Granted, this is not something that strategy and a strong team cannot overcome, but the fact that some opponents very late in the game can have Pokemon levels many more levels higher than your strongest fighter is just annoying. I could not properly count how many times the situation came to me having to rush back to a Pokemon Center to heal after only just a few, or even just one battle to heal my team. You can get through the game without losing your mind, but in short, it is very frustrating and tedious sometimes, and not in a way that really encourages strategic outlooks. Just one where type advantages honestly can make or break fights all on their own, which you rarely have good access to early on in the game, depending on where you start and what Pokemon you choose as your starter. And for all of this to then potentially be dependent on your starting point, well, the frustration can definitely be real. Aside from all of this, the game does bring something new to the table in that some areas of the game have been built upon or expanded to feature new locations or otherwise increase the size of old areas. Most of them are pretty simple, such as adding on a secret part of Viridian Forest that can only be accessed once you've gotten all 8 gym badges, while others create entirely new floors for you to explore, such as in Cerulean Cave in the post-game. And yes, this game does have a post-game, but at the same time, it's still just more of a continuation of the main game, so it's hard to really call it as such to a genuine degree.
These new areas really don't add a whole lot, but they are a nice touch, though the added battle tent in Celadon City can provide a new challenge to players and a sizable reward if you can survive a run through it.
In addition, most of the gym leaders in Elite Four are different than who they would be in the original Generation 1 games, and bring new types for you to battle against, so it isn't the same journey you might be used to taking. This also means that you'll need new strategies in order to actually conquer the game, and it will force you to choose your team wisely in order to overcome the many unique challenges that will be brought before you on your adventure.
Just as with Clover, the game's Pokédex is heavily inundated with Fakemon, but the majority of them are actually a lot older than you think. And that's because they pretty much were all created way back in the days of Generation 1 as part of the Pokémon Factory, which I will be covering the history and importance of shortly.
These creatures can be evolutions of real Pokémon, mutations of them, have their own evolutionary chain, or just exist as standalone monsters with some unique powers and attributes. A lot of them can get access to a lot of unique attacks and techniques that are brand new to the game, and a few even have access to the armor type, something completely new to the game and functions surprisingly different from the steel type of modern games, or even the mystery type, which comes with its own set of odd strengths and weaknesses. These creatures span from the adorable and awkward to the horrifying, monstrous, and just downright, well, WTF material. It might be apparent from looking at some of them though that a lot of them were designed with a scarier nature to their forms, and some of them can be a pain to both defeat and acquire. There are even new evolutionary stones thrown into the mix that can make for some odd and wild combinations, so there is definitely plenty of strangeness present. Though, not going to lie, the fact that there are 2 completely different Pokemon named Doomsday still feels odd. They both evolved from the same base Pokemon, sure, but you'd think they could at least have slightly different names. Then again, they are among the more macabre Fakemon in this game, and were seen as Pokegods back in the day, so maybe it's just better not to question it.
Now, as an aside, doing this review put me in an awkward position regarding the completion of the game for a very important reason. When I play a game like this, I am never satisfied with it unless I can manage to complete the Pokédex for the game. However, despite multiple playthroughs of the game, I must remark that I wasn't able to actually complete this one. I got 189 of the 190 creatures featured in it, but the last one in the Pokédex has completely eluded me despite multiple playthroughs, and there really isn't anything that I can find online to try and help me figure out what to do. I know what I'm looking for, but finding it has proven to be impossible despite all the tricks I have and have tried. So while I won't let it affect my review of this game, I will remark that this one small issue has left me more than a bit miffed.
With that said, before I wrap up my review for this game, I think it is important that I cover one other thing about it that should help to provide the one thing that is essential for enjoying this game to the fullest: the context behind its existence. The name of this game comes from what was once known as the Pokémon Factory, which, to give the short on it, was a site where talented sprite artists could take requests for ideas for new Pokémon and create mock-up sprite and Pokédex entries for them to show the world. In a sense, you could say that they were the first true creators of Fakemon outside of Japan, or at least among the most well-known of those first few groups, and there was a perfect niche for them to exist in.
You see, in the time between the first and second generations of Pokemon, not a lot of news about the development of Pokemon Gold and Silver made it overseas, and there really wasn't much in the way of official sources to get information from that could have exposed the West to the work that was being done, which is why things such as the 1997 Space World Gold and Silver demo weren't even close to widely known about, and that example in particular wasn't even really made a part of widespread public knowledge up until a few years ago when the entire beta was recovered and leaked to the masses online.
Because of this, speculation about what could be seen in a Generation 2 game ran rampant, and the Pokémon Factory exploited this by providing a way for fans to put their own creative input into the franchise to give everyone something to at least partially hold themselves over on until more information came out on the official releases. The vast majority of the creatures found in Factory Adventure are ripped straight from the early content of this online group of creators, so the name of the game is fitting for more than just inspiration. However, things did not stop there, as creators from the group continued to do the same for many generations after those early days, and apparently everything was working well until the site and its work was ultimately abandoned in the middle of the 2010s. While no more of these creations are coming out of the doors, the history and legacy of these early times in the franchise can still be viewed and admired today, as all of the original content is preserved on a site I will provide a link to in the description below.
I didn't have good internet back when this place was in its early days, so this time was sadly completely lost to me. But this game has given me the chance to look through the window a bit, back in time, to see what antics the fan community was actually up to in those early days. And while the site itself and those that were a part of it are no longer at the helm of the project, this game preserves a legacy and a tribute that I'm sure will likely bring up fond memories to those that took part of it so long ago.
It is a memorial to the work that fans put in to try to add their spin and input to the world of Pokemon, even if their opinions might not have changed the large-scale efforts that went into crafting each subsequent generation.
In conclusion, I can say that Pokémon Factory Adventure was an unusual romp, to say the least, and while it does have some notable flaws, I think that it is a game worth recognizing and respecting for what it has done to preserve an aspect of the early days of Pokemon fandom in the West.
The game's difficulty and the way it is mechanically designed makes the experience less than enjoyable in quite a few cases, but I can't really fault the game for that. Those faults are shared with the engine that it is built on, and while there are still plenty of Pokemon with all this in practice, it is a shared blame at the very least. Regardless, this game is a living piece of the early days of Pokemon in the West, and shows the kind of ideas that fans had back in the day before the days of Gen 2 in the West, and where they think the franchise could head towards in the future. It has great replayability, a classic feel, and has a rare Gen 1 ROM hack more than delivers on its performance, even if progress isn't as smooth as it could be. But then again, I have a hard time believing it could be, given the janky nature of progression that Generation 1 is known for.
I have to admit, before I went to write this review, the difficulty issues were more at the forefront of my mind than anything else, and I was going to say that the game really wasn't worth your time. But writing out my script for this presentation and delving into both the positives that are there and the actual history of the game has honestly changed my opinion as a whole. As such, the answer to the question is now clear. Catch it or run? The answer is... catch it! Thanks for watching, and tune in next time when I take a look at another fan project and see whether or not it's worth going through. Until then, have a wonderful day. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always a pleasure to help teach others about the world of Pokemon and the many facets of it that exist in both the world we call home and the world they call home. If you'd like, please leave a comment and subscribe and ring the bell to this channel to get regular updates on content and anything else that might be going on. You can find me and my written work on DeviantArt under the name Utitus and be informed of information and content uploads on my Twitter page and my Patreon page. Donations are always welcome. Always remember, the world of Pokemon is a vast and varied place, and there's no telling what secrets might be hiding just around the corner. So keep watch, stay vigilant, and always prepare for the unexpected. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of the day.